There's been a lot of crazy stuff happening in-game for Destiny 2 recently, and we're going to talk about all of it, but Bungie has also been in the news recently for things not even related to Destiny. The first thing had the whole internet talking, and Bungie landed themselves in hot water all because of a tweet that made a lot of people unhappy, and I thought it was worth talking about. Bungie's been known for being very political and definitely leaning on the progressive side of things, and this tweet was essentially in that vein. They use terms such as Latinx, which is a very controversial term that is used mainly by Americans to describe the Latin community that the Latin community doesn't really seem to accept. So their intention was to try and be inclusive, or I guess educational, but ended up using a term that Latin people seem to despise, and even got a Twitter community note, which is always very interesting. It states that not even descendants of Latino migrants to the USA even like Latinx or Latin E, and Latin people would be correct, or Latin person. Latinx and E are suggestions by people who don't understand Latin languages or foreign culture. There were also a bunch of replies from Latin people objecting about how this is not a term that they do prefer, and those tweets ended up being hidden by Bungie themselves, which also didn't end up looking too good. I myself am not Latin or even American, but if you guys are, then do leave your comments down below. I'm interested to know what you think about this, but many have said this comes across as tone deaf and quite culturally insensitive to have one group of Americans telling a Latin culture what they should be called, especially when they've expressed they don't like those terms. There have been a few community notes that have been updated over the time. One of the earlier ones stated that Latinx is a widely rejected terminology due to not making sense within any Latino language, writing, or pronunciation rules. I mean, however you look at it, hiding tweets is never seen as a good thing, and especially from a company trying to be on the inclusive side. But comment below, do you think Bungie missed the mark and were wrong for this, or do you think it's kind of an overreaction and they had good intentions? Now, for context on why this is a big deal, this tweet racked up over 24 million views. So that is quite a lot, even though Twitter views are kind of made up, they're like impressions, but I had to scroll through and couldn't find any tweet even remotely close to this. When the servers were melting down because of the DDoS attacks, one of them got 6 million and a couple got 5 and 4 million, which is quite a lot. The announcement trailer of Marathon got 5 million, them removing Legendary Shards got 2 million, and the Final Shape reveal trailer got 1.8 million. The average tweets get around 100 to 500k views, so 24 million and counting on this one is massive. Probably their biggest tweet maybe ever, so this is why it got so many people talking about it and why it was a massive topic. What's even more strange and kind of out of the ordinary for Bungie is that they haven't actually responded or acknowledged it. They haven't deleted the tweet. I would have imagined they would have just kind of said like, our bad, and apologized by now, but they seem to be standing by it. Now, soon after that, some even bigger news came out, which is definitely not good timing, and Bungie is being sued by a former HR manager. They're alleging wrongful termination due to discrimination, and it sounds very messy, but I think with any legal matter, the whole point of the lawsuit is to get to the bottom of the truth of what happened, and that's kind of all that matters. So while it is easy for any of us on the internet to kind of jump to conclusions in either direction, it's a bit pointless for people not involved to comment as if they know what really happened. But that's kind of inevitable with the internet. People are going to get involved and have their own opinions, but we shall see how the lawsuit goes. But regardless, it has not been a good few weeks for Bungie on the PR front, and all the timings of these don't look good. The next topic that had a bunch of people talking was Bungie apparently using AI to help develop Destiny and its other games. This came from The Game Post, who reported about a new Bungie job listing for generative AI-led tools, which was since taken down. And this was about incorporating Gen AI into their game development process. And as you can imagine, it sparked a discussion around AI, which is becoming kind of a weird topic and a lot of people are rightfully opposed to. But I don't think this is as a big deal as it was made out to be, or the headline might seem. This is more just using AI tools by engineers to improve their workflow. It's not really new or an uncommon thing. It's the type of AI that's existed for a long time. So it's not like Bungie is replacing human developers with AI robots and replacing artists and creators with ChatGPT. This is more just engineers using tools for programming and coding and that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting discussion, but the truth is that it isn't that out of the ordinary for game development. Now, on to some more positive news. This was really interesting. You might have heard about the massive Xbox leak. As they tried to buy Activision for $70 billion, the FTC investigated them and launched a lawsuit where Microsoft had to give the FTC a bunch of super confidential info. The FTC then released all that to their website, although they claim the leak is actually Microsoft's fault. Apparently they were supposed to only submit public safe versions, but uploaded the confidential versions by mistake. So basically a ton of internal secrets and company plans all the way up to 2030 are now public, and many are calling it one of the biggest leaks in the history of the industry. Now, there was a ton of details that came out, but some of the most interesting stuff was that we saw Destiny is actually ranked 7th in the most engaged game franchise between 2015 and 2019. So it's a pretty impressive ranking, and these stats obviously include Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 with 3.3 billion hours played, 2 billion monthly active users, and an average annual playtime of 420 hours. That last one is actually the highest of all the games on this list, so none of them were even over 300, and that's kind of surprising. Initially, I'd be skeptical to think if it's even real, but this is from Xbox themselves, so it's probably the most accurate data you can get. But it means Destiny was the #1 for annual playtime as a franchise, and clearly did a good job in retaining players for the entire year compared to especially these other massive titles. Of course, this is only for Xbox, so we don't know about the PlayStation numbers, but I wouldn't imagine there'd be a huge difference, and in fact the numbers might even be higher. Destiny, of course, had a ton of PlayStation exclusives and first releases and a strong relationship with Sony the entire time, especially from Destiny 1. So Destiny was probably even more successful on PlayStation. And it's important to note this only goes up to 2019. So since then, Bungie did split from Activision. They went technically kind of free to play. They decided to keep working on Destiny 2 instead of making Destiny 3, and of course were bought by Sony as well. So perhaps the numbers would be lower these days, but Destiny still has a very dedicated player base. But definitely was surprising that Bungie and Destiny had the highest annual playtime of all of these games. Now, one of the craziest things that also came from these documents is that Xbox were looking into buying Nintendo, and also Warner Brothers, Valve, and ZeniMax, who they actually did purchase. But the CEO of Xbox is saying that Nintendo is the prime asset for us and most likely path to consumer relevance. He said out of all the American companies, he thinks that they are in the best position to acquire Nintendo, but unfortunately they're sitting on a huge pile of cash, and he doesn't see a way to merge with Nintendo, and also doesn't think a hostile action would be a good move. So he says that they're just going to play the long game and wait out. So it's pretty interesting to see this is how the world's biggest company CEOs talk about acquiring each other, but it's interesting how he notes a hostile takeover is an option, but he knows it wouldn't look good publicly, which is definitely obvious. He also thinks that Nintendo would be a career moment for him and also a good move for both companies, thinks they would both benefit, and also that Nintendo's future should be off their own hardware, which is a very interesting point, meaning he thinks Nintendo should use their Xbox and PC hardware and stick to software like games. In other emails, he said that 2022 was a disaster and we need to get better at honesty on release dates. And the documents also show, interestingly, that GTA 5 cost them $12 to $15 million a month just to have on the Game Pass. It's worth noting all these docs are from 2022, so lots will have changed since then, but it is a pretty interesting snapshot of the time. But them wanting to buy Nintendo is definitely a huge revelation, and especially now that Nintendo are going to see this, it might sour their relationship. The plans they've been plotting have basically been exposed, so it kind of like ruins their hand. Even though it would have been extremely unlikely they could have purchased Nintendo, and obviously they don't want to be bought either, and probably not by an American company, and also the FTC probably wouldn't be happy with the purchase either, the same way with Activision. I think what makes Nintendo so good is their independence from the kind of Western ideas of running a gaming company. They seem to be just kind of purists about just making good games. They don't want to take over the world or make live service subscription models. They just release incredibly polished games on their own time, and they save up their money to not be dependent on anyone else. So I think being owned by Xbox would probably change a lot of what makes them great. But pretty much all these companies are playing business chess. It's all strategy and moves to grow and profit. And it's the kind of talk we know companies have behind closed doors, but we never get to see publicly. It's all Nintendo are our friends and our allies. We support each other, work together. But in private, they're talking about how do we take this company and add it to our portfolio and wait them out, wait the long game. But especially him saying, unfortunately, Nintendo have a bunch of cash, which is fortunate for them, meaning if they were struggling or needed to raise funds, they would attempt to possibly exploit this or take them over. But Nintendo have enough money. But mergers and acquisitions are all part of the top level business world, and it was interesting to kind of get this peek behind the curtain. Now, as far as Destiny 2, Season of the Witch has been doing pretty well gameplay wise. The Deck of Whispers was definitely a success, and story wise has been seen as one of the best seasons yet. The ending was a bit mixed, as only half of it was actually in the cutscene, which was very good. But the other half of pretty important stuff was in Lortaz, which was quite strange, and definitely a lot of people would have missed out on a lot of what actually happened after the cutscene. Savathun actually got resurrected again and allowed to leave if she lets the Vanguard keep her ghost. So Savathun's just out here wandering somewhere. And now Xivu got weakened, Eris returned back to normal, and now we know how to open the portal to head into the Traveler for final shape. A lot of people were wondering why so much happened outside the cutscene and off screen, and whether it was due to a budget or resource limitation. And some are also concerned about what this means for the episodes after Final Shape when they replace the seasons, and if these sorts of limitations are going to affect the story, which without the major expansions is supposed to be kind of the main focus, the cinematic element they've talked about a lot. But ending aside, overall the season went down pretty well. There were of course the very strange times of the crafting glitch and also the DDoS attacks, which kept servers down for a very long time. But in general, Season of the Witch has been pretty successful, and let me know how you guys have found it. Next, you should go watch my newest podcast episode with Bife. We talked about a ton more Destiny and Final Shape topics. You can click here to watch it, or you can click here to watch a clip from the episode if you prefer shorter videos. But don't forget to hit the thumbs up before you go if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.